Hey, Seuss, how's it going? Welcome to Nervous Habits.
Dude, thank you, man. I'm a little nervous. No, I'm
Nah, man,
playing.
that's good. Let me ask you a question to jumpstart our conversation here. So I had a chef on here, and the first thing that I asked him was, "What was the last thing he ate?" So I want to ask you sort of the relevant analogy here. As a stand-up comedian, when was the last time that you laughed until you cried?
The last time I laughed till I cried, um, probably a conversation with a friend of mine. We were uh, we were laughing at some video. I forget what the video was, but me and my buddy Ian Edwards, we were laughing on the phone until we were like crying. Couldn't even breathe. I couldn't even breathe. But yeah, I think that was the last time, which was 2 days ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good to hear that it was like a friend that made you laugh and wasn't just some, curated piece of content on Instagram or something that you saw on like Netflix. It was actually like a human to human relationship. I think
Yeah,
that's special.
yeah, it was a human to human relationship. It was my homie Ian Edwards, and we were just kind of dissecting this premise, I guess, further and further, and we were one upping each other, and we just kept heightening, the joke or whatever. But yeah, it's a thing that most people do in a conversation with a friend. It's like you say something funny, you add to it, and then before you know it, you're both out of air, crying, laughing.
Awesome. Yeah, man. No, I can totally relate to that. And it's good to hear that as a comedian, you still have those moments. So Jesus, would you tell people that you're a comedian? Let's say you're out at a bar and, someone says, what do you do for a living? What's the most common response that you get? Because I can imagine that it'd be something like, tell me a joke.
Yeah, you learn your lesson early on as a comic, because the formative years is like you're really excited, that you're working towards the title of comedian, and then you're proud of what you do, and you're out and about at a bar and somebody says, what do you do? I'm a comedian. It's like, oh really? You don't look that funny. That's the first one, followed by tell me something funny, and it's like, oh, here we go. And then I think, at least I speak for myself, I think early on I took the bait, and I'm like, oh, I got a one liner for you, and then you would say it, and it's like, wah wah wah. You're like,
Ah,
oh, all right, man, good luck with that. You're like, shit, why did I say that? I was like, why did I say the joke? But um after a while I stopped saying that I was a stand-up comic. Even now it's like I'm just like, oh, I write, or I don't know. I'll make up something, because it usually ends up going in that direction. Tell me a joke. It's like, and then if I say, hey, I'm a comic, and they're like, tell me a joke, I'm like, you got to come out to a show. That's usually how I deflect, politely. I said, oh man, I think it would be better if you come out to a show. I got a show coming up, and then you give them a ticket or whatever, or, tell them the directions. And I think it's just because there's a conducive place for stand-up comedy, and being like face to face with a person at a bar is like, yeah, it's not very conducive. There's a lot of variables to control, and yeah, usually that's it doesn't end well.
it's also not fair, man. If you've been in comedy for like 10, 20 years, someone expects you to distill, a decade or two of a career into just like a 5-second assessment based on the first thing you can come up with. It's not an accurate depiction of what you can do.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and I'm sure you've heard it from other comedians, and I've heard it in different like comedians interviews. It's like, I don't think that happens in any other profession. It's like any other profession. It's like, I saw that you're pursuing a law degree. You're getting your Juris Doctorate, right? It's like nobody says, hey, solve this thing for me. It's like, I have a problem. It's like, they'll ask you for it, but it's like, I don't know, like a chef. Hey, make me something to eat right now. It's like, dude, I'm watching a baseball game. It's like I don't think that quite happens with any other profession as much as with stand-up comedy.
Yeah, man. No, for sure. So something that we like to do on Nervous Habits is really explore sort of like the mindset, the motivations, the daily struggles that you deal with as a comedian. So do you feel like, and maybe you've gotten this question before, but do you feel like, you ever feel exhausted by having to be on all the time? Like, having to have that mental CPU go towards needing to have the right energy. Does that take its toll on you?
I don't think it takes a toll on me. It's like the whole thing of being on. It's like it's a very interesting concept because they feel like comedians are always this like whoa, this wacky, bouncing off the walls personality that we all have, and that's not necessarily true. I think we're most stand-up comics, at least for myself, we're more of the you know being on. I think the on part is observing and taking your surroundings and situations and characters that you can later tap into. So I don't know if that gets exhausting. I think for me it's more exhausting to turn off my thinking. It's like sometimes I can't sleep because I'm thinking about a joke or a premise or this thing that happened. And for me it's almost like I can't turn that part of the brain off. It's more, instead of being on, people think it's like, hey, what's up, man, like that um show host type of energy, and it's not quite that. It's more of some people are like, oh, it's like if people didn't like, if the people around you didn't know and they met you for the first time, they wouldn't know that you're a stand-up comic. And it's like, oh, I guess, but I feel like stand-up comedians are how can I say it? It's like we're the modern day philosophers. It's like back in the day, you know, Plato or Socrates would go to the plaza and they go up there and talk about their observations and that kind of thing. And nowadays it's a comedy club, but they're not out and about, talking philosophy.
I like that parallel though, because a lot of people watch comedy and it's almost like this gallows humor where you're laughing at someone like Louis C.K. or George Carlin because what they're saying is true, because of the
Sure.
observations they're making are so dead on. I mean, look at Jerry Seinfeld, just the everyday
Right.
observations. People laugh because not only is it funny, but because it's accurate.
Yeah, it's accurate, and you also got to keep in mind it's like a comedian. A comedian's well can run dry, and it's from not having not enough, but not having life experience. And it's like the early years are kind of hard as a young comic because you don't really have life under your belt. It's like it's with time that you're able to kind of pull these things and be able to showcase that. And this was supposed to make a point, and I drifted off.
No,
But
no, you're good, man. Yeah.
yeah, dang it. But yeah, like a guy like George Carlin. Yeah, we'll come back to that point. I had a dang it. I had a point. I'm gonna write it
No,
up.
man, it'll come back to you. So I do want to chat about your background because it's always
Yeah.
interesting to me talking about, looking at comedians and getting a sense of like, oh, were they the class clown growing up? Were you the funny kid in your friend group, or did that just did you get the funny bug later in life?
I wasn't the class clown. I was always very quiet. I got into a lot of trouble, just doing stupid things. And I think it was coming from being an only child and trying to get attention and that kind of thing. So I would I would be the kid who would um, write in permanent marker on the whiteboard. So when the teacher went to go erase it, it's like, oh, who the hell wrote this? Like that was my style of humor, and people laughed, and I was in the back, okay with not getting credit for the joke. I was just like ha 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 kind of thing, like low key, like, oh, I'm laughing just like everyone else. So who did it? Shit, I don't know. So that was my style of comedy. I was never like the class clown.
It's interesting that you didn't need to be in the spotlight, because a lot of people who are in show business, they do things like that because they want the attention. But you were more focused on just making people laugh, it sounds like, and just
Yeah.
being in on the joke.
Yeah, being in on the joke, I almost like again, it goes back to the only child aspect of it. It's like wanting to be included. When you're an only child, you're kind of a lone wolf. So it's like, I wanted to bond, or like I was always very awkward, and I had this nervous kind of thing about myself that I've always had since I was a kid, and to be kind of included in a group of friends. I was a lone wolf, so if something happened and we all laugh, it's that going to the movie theaters by yourself syndrome.
Mm.
When they laugh at something, you're like, oh, right, that was funny, man. And you
Uh,
want to feel included. So I felt like that was my mechanism for being quote unquote included. You see what I'm saying? And then, with comedy, I think the second part to that was, in my upbringing was, I'm Mexican American. My parents are from Mexico. I was born in Long Beach, California. So it's like I was living in two worlds. You know, I was living in Long Beach, California, and also I was living in a world where my parents only spoke Spanish. They didn't know English. I grew up around only Spanish speakers, so I didn't have command of the language until like around the fifth grade, really. You know, but having said that, it's like Mexican culture has a lot of roasting elements to it. You know, it's a way of, you know, bringing you in, showing you love. You know, it's like you've heard the phrase, "You only roast the people you love." That's very much a Mexican culture thing. They chop you down pretty hard, and who else can hurt you like family, right?
Right.
So I would get roasted. And going to school, kids are mean. They've always been mean. You know, they start making fun of your shoes because, you know, they look ugly or you don't have the name brand. So you have to learn this self-defense kind of thing. And for me, it was comedy, and it was being able to fire back and roast and being able to say that. So I guess the spotlight later came about when, you know, somebody said, "Hey, look at his shoes." And then I'm able to snap back,
Mm-hmm.
you know, the rule of improv. Yeah, my shoes are shitty, but, you know, let's talk about this haircut you got right here.
That's pretty
You know,
good.
so it's like as soon as you start highlighting certain things that they're like, oh, like I'm gonna highlight things that are just ridiculous about you. You're gonna feel bad, and I would get ass whoopings no matter what, but I earned them, you know. So it's like if I'm gonna get my ass whooped, it might as well be from a guy who's crying, a bully who's crying and whooping my ass, you know. So it was those two sides of it. You know, I was a quiet one. I didn't need credit to, hey, I'm getting picked on. I'm gonna roast and make fun of you and make kids around me laugh. And then, you know, it's kind of validating. It's almost like the kid that can draw when you're little. It's like, oh, that guy's cool. Hey man, that guy is funny, man. He made fun of so and so. He said his ears look like XYZ, you know.
Yeah, and it's so empowering too. I mean, you're taking this thing comedy and you're utilizing it as like a defense mechanism to protect yourself. So if someone's giving you shit, you're able to rag on them, and then they think, you know what, we don't want to screw with Jesus because he could actually like get us back pretty hard, and you end up like essentially using it to, you know, almost like other people would use their fists in a fight.
Yeah, it's like, and also I think with roasting, because it's like your first intro to what something could go viral. Like I remember making fun, like some guy made fun of like some knockoff shoes that I had in high school, right? And I remember just lighting them up. He had these name brand shoes, but they were pretty worn out, you know. And I remember saying, it's like, oh, your shoes look like old, like dirty bicycle grips. And that was enough for kids to laugh, and that had the most like residual laughs, if that makes sense, because people are like, hey, someone's Jesus said his shoes look like bicycle grips. Oh my god, they do. And it would be passed around until eventually, you know, nobody would give you credit, but you know, but for a while it was like, oh, you know, the bully, wait, he got his ass kicked. No, he made the guy walk away because he made fun of his shoes, you know.
Yeah, man, for sure. So when you were, you know, growing up, what were your favorite comedies? Like, what did you laugh at when you were like first getting into this kind of thing?
I think it starts off like in my upbringing, like early, my form, like little kid years, you know. It's like I was introduced to Mexican comedian actors, you know, and it's like Chespirito, which that was a nickname. A nickname given to him because he used to be a soccer player, and he turned, you know, playwright. So Chespirito, Shakespeare. So they would call him Little Shakespeare, you know.
Mm.
And he had this phenomenal show about a apartment building, and he lived in a barrel. Like it was like this poor kid that lived in a barrel, and he was friends with the kids who lived in the other apartments. His only obstacle in life was to get a ham sandwich, and
Wow.
you know, it was very endearing. It came from a very humble place, and it was hysterical. That was my comedy. I would memorize episodes and, you know, memorize the little punchlines that would, you know, that he would say, and you know, I got a kick out of the laugh track that they played on it. Then later it became Cantinflas, you know, which, you know, Charlie Chaplin regarded him as the funniest comedian ever, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, there's been movies made on Cantinflas, and this guy, you know, his film that popped was, you know, this film about a guy who was a street sweeper. He would walk around the street sweeping, you know, and had a trash can and a broom, sagged his pants, wore a handkerchief, hilarious, and India Maria. So that's what was funny to me, like all the gag, like the physical humor, you know, which later became Three Stooges,
Like
and
slapstick.
slapstick, yes, like Buster Keaton, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Got a little painting there my manager gave me.
Yeah, I see. It looks great.
So that stuff, like the yeah, physical humor that you know was hysterical to me. And then, you know, as I was growing up, I would watch cartoons, and that was like cartoons. I mean, there's no limit as to the humor comes from physicality. It comes from dialogue. It brought everything together. Funny pictures, you know. So over the years, things just kind of, I just kept kind of adding to this, you know, palette that we call comedy. And then, you know, eventually getting into stand up, and, you know, through cartoons, that's how I, you know, found out of like a Howie Mandel with Bobby's World, and Louis Anderson with Life with Louie, and, you know, the PJs later on. I was like, you know, Eddie Murphy, and then the Simpsons. So you start to kind of dive into this world, and, you know, I became enamored with, you know, comedians like Richard Pryor, and, you know, I love Brian Regan, George Lopez, because George Lopez was a guy who I'm like, wow, he speaks to me. He's living the truth that I live, you know, having, you know, being a person who's in both worlds, living in this country with family that comes from Mexico, and, you know, even a Paul Rodriguez, you know, and then, you know, over the years it became Mitch Hedberg, Dave Attell, JB Smooth. I became fascinated with.
He's hilarious. He's still. I mean, some of the other guys are also still performing, but I know he's on Curb Your Enthusiasm. I can't keep a straight face anytime he walks in the room. He's amazing.
He's the next level, and he's like in the improv thing. And then like also speaking of improv, you dive into like long form Herald improv. You know, you start diving into all these quadrants of comedy. But I mean, yeah.
So was there a moment, I don't know if there was a specific moment, or maybe there was a time where you sort of just realized, oh shit, I'm actually really funny, and I might be able to do this for a living, as opposed to just making your friends laugh at the bar on the weekends, where you can actually see it as a career and not a hobby?
I'm still waiting for that moment. You know, any minute now. You know, I don't know if that was a thing, but no, I'm playing. I don't know. It's like you start off, you know, doing it, and I don't think there's any clear cut moment of I'm really funny. Like this is like a career. Like you just kind of stick with it and not let it kind of defeat you almost. You know, it's like you get a laugh at whatever point that is in your youth, and you're always kind of chasing that dragon. You know, it's like you're looking for it. You know, it's a very addictive thing. But I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that there was a clear cut moment of, damn, I'm really funny. Like I have this very nervous personality, and, you know, my confidence could be better. But, you know, I'm very happy and thrilled when I'm able to get a joke work from, you know, from thinking it to writing it to performing it to eventually, you know, having it go up somewhere on a TV recording of some kind, you know, or publishing it, I should say. But I mean, along the way, there's a lot of self-doubt. So for me personally, I don't think there's ever a clear, like, oh damn, I'm pretty funny. It's like I do okay, you know. But,
yeah.
And it's also ever changing. You know, you can't like stay married to any one premise or joke. It's like eventually you got to move on. You know, it's published, and then you move on to the next thing.
For sure, man. And I think that authenticity comes through. I've seen you perform, obviously, and just talking to you right now, I think those people, those comedians, and those people in show business in general do the best because they're not putting on appearances. It's like, this is me. This is who I am. If you find me funny, great. If not, you know, that's okay too.
Yeah. I always say that. It's like, if you think I'm funny, great. If not, that's okay too. And, you know, everything I talk about stems from a reality or a truth. And then, you know, it's exaggerated through my wordplay and my comedic lens of making it funny and, you know, fluffing it out a little bit. But, you know, that's my style. If not, comedy is subjective. You know, if you don't like me, there's a million other ones over there who you'll enjoy.
For sure. So I wanted to think back to your first stand-up experience. Sort of like let people in on how much you've grown since then. Did you get any laughs? Was there awkward silences? What was the ambience like in the crowd?
Oh man, I would say the first time I went on stage, it was, I was 20 years old. I wasn't allowed to be in the bar, but I had gone the previous week, and I asked the guy if I can get up. He's like, how old are you? You look kind of young. I'm like, oh, 20, because dumbass, I should have said 21, and moved the conversation along. But I felt the need to say 20. And then he's like, oh, you can't be here, man. They're going to shut the place down. I'm like, well, I see you run a comedy night. If I come back next week and I get on, he's like, yeah, whatever. If you can get past the bouncer, kind of laughed it off. And somehow I was able to get past him. I got there early. I waited, walked in. It was no big deal. I didn't even think twice about it. I walked up and I'm like, hey, can I go up? And he's like, yeah, man. And, you get 3 minutes or whatever it was. And I had, maybe 5-10 minutes ready to go of just fire. At least that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And then, and then I go on stage and I perform. And I rattled everything I had in my mind prepared. Was gone in like 3 minutes flat, maybe even less. And I panicked. I don't know what to do. No one's laughing. I'm eating it hard. And at that point, I'm like, and mind you, I had a friend there from high school. His name's Ton, and he had a camcorder going because I thought it would be a great idea to film that. So he has, the camcorder in the back, and I'm like, I'm done. I go to get off stage. I try to hand off the mic. It's wireless. It drops. I didn't wait.
Ooh.
I don't wait for him to grab onto the mic. Falls, batteries spew out. As I'm going, I tip over the freaking mic stand, and I'm sweating. I'm sweating. It is not good. It is a slippery slope of just filth. Just like not knowing what I'm doing. Then I go up to my friend who's still recording. He has a camera in my face, and he's like, how do you feel? I'm like, you just saw what happened, dude. Like, let's get out of here.
Oh my God.
So we leave the bar, and he's still recording. He's like, oh man, so how do you feel? I'm like, yeah, turn the shit off. And that was it, man. It was terrible. And I waited a year. To get back up, right? So I just turned 20 or something like that. So at 21, I remember this. At 21, I go back. I get back up, I should say. I get back up and I perform. And look, believe it or not, like I bombed harder than the first time. So that was fun.
Possible, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know it was possible. Minus the mic drop and it was the worst kind of mic drop. So,
but Jesus, do you regret it? I'm sure there are people listening here who have maybe thought about doing stand-up, but they're worried about overcoming that initial, hurdle of getting onto the stage, looking out into the bright lights. Do you think that it was an essential experience for you? Or, it sounds like it also sort of discouraged you for a year. So what's the cost benefit analysis like there?
If I guess that's kind of the test you got to run your dream under. Like if you submit yourself to pursuing your dream, whatever it may be, and you have a similar, awful experience like I did, I think at that point you kind of decide like, do I like this enough to go through that again, if not worse? And the answer for me was yes. And then, I did it again and it was awful. And I do remember that there was encouragement along the way. There was a guy there by the name of Danny Sparks, very funny comic. And he, I remember sent me a message and was like, hey, you got to get up. The longer you wait, the less likely it is that you'll get back up again. And I remember he stayed on top of it until I got up. I'm like, hey man, I got up again. He's like, great. And, I think there is something to it. It's like, once you get defeated in whatever matchup you're up against, from the time you fall down, recover, gather your thoughts, and hit the gym again, that's very crucial. It's like time is ticking, and the harder it is for you to get back into it. And I think I was lucky enough that whatever that time frame was, I went up when I was supposed to. And look, everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Who knows?
Yeah, man. I think for you it was like an essential growing experience because it did work out. I think some people maybe can't deal with that failure or overcome that adversity. But I do want to shift gears and discuss with you sort of the way that comedy in general has permeated Western society over the last few decades. Because if you think about it, I read this in a book called Planet Funny by Ken Jennings. And if you think about it, comedy really dominates American culture and Western culture in general, because there's constantly pressure on people to be funny. Presidential candidates have to have zingers in all their jokes. Airline safety videos always have to have a punchline. If you go
Right.
on Twitter, Jesus, everyone's got a funny clap back. People are thinking up, captions on Instagram and memes to send to their friends. So let me ask you, why do you think that comedy has come to dominate culture as it has in the last couple decades?
I think that's a great question, and I think comedy is one of those things like leave it to Western culture to sugarcoat, medicine, to be able to digest something they need. It's like they have to take the news with a grain of salt, like some humor. So it's like, I think it's the way that we as Western culture can digest what's happening in the world, and it also brings us together. I think it's like comedy is kind of a thing used in all aspects. It's how does it bring us together? It's like how does it allow us to consume information that's essential to our well-being. Whether it's an airline video, you click your
Yeah.
seatbelt like this, and there's a whole Cirque du Soleil type production in the background. It's I think people really place a value in being entertained. It's like it's how we digest things. It's how we laugh at our differences, and be able to kind of move forward as a whole, and kind of leave certain unfortunate events behind us, or it's a way of critically thinking what it is that we're that's going on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think there is an element of a coping mechanism to it. Like you said, with digesting, you look at like The Daily Show and all these like late night talk show hosts that present the news to people and they can laugh about it. But it is also interesting to think about like, what do people laugh at? I mean, in your career, you do this for a living. Like, is there, do you ever just think about like, what do people find funny? Is there like a subject that people find funny? Is it people find their own misfortune funny, others misfortune? Like what do you think people actually, see humor in? It's sort of like a metaphysical question.
Yeah, I think people see humor in all kinds of things, and I think going back to the thing I said of, comedy's so subjective, and comedy spectrum wise is a wide spectrum. There's stuff that you shouldn't laugh at, but again, that's totally based on somebody's moral compass. Like that, you shouldn't laugh at this, all the way to, somebody slipping on a banana peel,
Yeah.
to a fart sound, fart sounds here to, everything in between. It just, I mean, I'm not amazed at what people laugh at more than almost, how can I say it? The people that like your humor will gravitate towards you. It's like Instagram. It's such a niche type of, I don't know how to explain it, like organisms. Like if you like food stuff, hey, we're gonna go find a an Instagram account that's solely for food. And if there's an account dedicated to, I don't know, caterpillars, that's not my thing, really. I won't even follow the hashtag or anything. You see what I'm saying? Like humor kind of magnetizes, people, like-minded people together. And yeah, does that make sense? It's hard
It
to put
does.
into words.
No, man. I mean, these are like, these are sort of like subjective questions, but it sounds like what you're saying is there's no objective funny. It's like there's no one joke, like the universal joke that everyone finds funny. It's like maybe comedy is like a reflection of your values or a reflection of your preferences or your beliefs. Like
Yeah,
it's a mirror.
there's some universal truths, that we all kind of, live by or have experienced no matter where in the world you are. And I think when you tap into that, that's kind of when you get into the universal, like kind of comedy kind of thing. Like, everyone's, if you can make if you can find the right jokes to express, mourning the loss of a loved one, it's like finding what that feels like, and somebody going relate like, oh damn, like that's happened to me, somebody being rejected for a job, a relationship, relationship humor, that kind of thing, or some embarrassment, some universal embarrassment. Hey, I went somewhere and this happened to me. It's like, I think those are the things that are kind of like in the middle, and any tangent aside, above or below that, it's just kind of a niche preference.
So if you had to like label your brand of humor, obviously you just released a special on Showtime. Congrats on that. That's your
Thank you,
first
man.
one, your first comedy special. So like what, how would you categorize your humor for people listening? Is it, is it self-deprecating humor? Is it, relatable experiences that people have?
I think it's self-deprecating. I always kind of go in that direction, self-deprecating, because I feel like, I'm making fun of myself. Everyone can enjoy it, like whatever. There's no real butt of the joke. But also, I fall into like, family stories, my upbringing, so self-deprecating, upbringing stories, observational humor. I like wordplay sometimes, like in the pun area. Like I dabble a little bit, but not too much. But it's just my little guilty pleasure. I like kind of squeezing a little pun here and there. But yeah, overall, it's just stories. I think I like to kind of live in the space of storytelling meets one-liners. If I could,
Absolutely.
if I can express a story that I want to tell using one-liners that I obsess over tremendously, I think that's when you get my better material.
And where does this inspiration come from? Like, do you carry, I know the old school comedians had like notebooks. Do you just like, you're on the subway, you jot something in your phone? Do you like have voice memos? How does your process work?
For me, my process is I usually carry a notebook. I like to write on these like,
Yeah.
like these
Old,
little,
I like that. It's old school.
yeah, like little pieces of paper, or like, small notebooks, big notebooks. You can see my notebooks there in the back. I email stuff to myself. Sometimes I think the best way for me, if I'm really out and about, again, I can't turn my mind off, with the comedic stuff. So sometimes I'll be in a place where I can't pull out my, my legal pen and be like, let's write about, bicycles. Bicycles are funny because, so what I do is I email it to myself. So I have like kind of a running file for the week, and I label it jokes, and the date as of Monday. And then throughout the week, I keep pulling out that email, and I'll reply back to myself. So the first email could be like, bicycles, bicycles are so amazing. I feel like somebody dropped the ball when it came down to the bicycle seat, some simple little thought like that. And then I email it to myself. Then I think of something else, and it could be like, I don't know, some other dumb one-liner thing. I reply back to that email of the bicycle. So by the end, like Friday or Saturday or Sunday even, when I have time to sit down, I open up my laptop and I have a running file of everything that I had. And now I'm writing to prompts, basically. So now I have a rough set list, if you will. So my first email is, hey, for the, write on bicycles, for the next whatever 15, 30 minutes until you gas out. And then once you're like, I can't think of anything. Oh, let's look at this other one-liner on headphones. Let's write on headphones for the next whatever till I gas out, till eventually I've addressed every single email, whether it's an email a day that I sent myself, or, Tuesday I sent myself 9 emails replying back to that chain. And then, Thursday, Friday, I didn't write anything. Saturday, I'll sit down and write. So like, I don't really give myself the task of every day, but when I do sit down and write, it's like I'm going for it.
Yeah. And what do? Do you like call your parents or like your friends and you test out the jokes on them, or do you just perform them at sets at like the LA comedy scene and then see how people receive them to see what's funniest?
Well, yeah, like now with the quarantine and everything, I think my process is a little different. But before, it's, I would do that at the end of the week, but every day I would have like my notebook. Again, I would carry my notebook with all the jokes that had been written out during the previous week, and I try to, get them up on the following week. So the goal for me was to always come out with a minute of like new material, right? And the goal at the end of the week was 5 minutes, which I never came close to having like a polished 5 minutes at the end of the week because it's so hard, you know. But I gave myself 7 days, a minute a day to come up with 5. That way, if you know, Saturday, Sunday, I took some time off. I wasn't behind, but at the end of the week, I would surprise myself. I had a minute, 2 minutes of stuff that I was like, oh, this is like without question funny, you know. I would do that a lot, and then I would go on stage. I would try it out that night, and I always recorded my sets. I recorded my sets on my phone. I grabbed the phone, put it on the stool, and I recorded. So my groove was that I work during the day to get my my jokes together. I try them out at night. I record it. I will listen to the recording on the way home because I live far from LA. And I'll listen to it. And then in the morning, I'd wake up, have my coffee or have breakfast, put on my headphones, and I will listen to the set from last night, right? And I would kind of, because it's easier to give yourself constructive criticism by listening to you than being in the moment and be like, no, you should say it this way. You should say it that way. It's almost like you're watching somebody else. It's like, when you watch, stand up, it's like, oh, I wonder if he's going to take it this way. You're doing that in real time to yourself. So you're writing notes. And again, going back to that email file, just writing that, the joke I had about, like the last joke I remember working on before the whole quarantine was this joke about mustard. And it's like, all right, go back and add this line to that existing joke, drop the previous one. And then I tried it on one of the shows. I was like, oh no, I need that line back. So this can work. So yeah.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie. I kind of want to hear this mustard joke, but I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't know.
The premise. I'll tell you just the opening premise, and the premise is like I feel like I've been working on the same bottle of mustard since I was a kid.
Oh my god, that's
it's
funny.
Like, and I feel like it's been a part of my life a long time. And then the line that I was talking about just now, it may not seem funny, but to me, there's something humorous, and it's like I feel like they haven't fully invented mustard yet. Like everything we've tasted is prototypes. Think of mustard. It's like, and that was the last thing I remember kind of working out. Is like, think of mustard, yellow mustard, spicy mustard, Dijon mustard. It's like, fucking, you guys are close. Like, keep going. and then me realizing it's like, if you ever tasted mustard and it was delicious, that's honey mustard for sure. It's like, and I feel like honey's, I feel like honey is pulling most of that relationship. It's like it's holding up that relationship really. But yeah, just that idea. And again, it doesn't make any sense or it isn't laugh out loud. But to me, that's why I can't sleep at night, just thinking about dumb things like that.
Dude, so I thought you were going in a different direction. I thought you were saying that when you said I've been working on the same bottle of mustard since I was a kid. I thought what was relatable in that is so many people when they're living with their folks or they're living on their own have these like bottles of condiments that just, it seems like it never ends. You're using the same bottle of ketchup and mustard for years. And yeah. Hearing that, it's like you can relate to the fact that, you always wonder, when was the last time I got a new bottle of mustard? Because it's probably like 10 years old.
So that joke. So I skipped ahead to another joke. The part of the mustard thing. So I say that initial line, then it became like, it's like, how do you know mustard's bad? It's like, okay. It's like, you don't. That's what it tastes like, I guess. It's like, how do you know mustard's bad? So that was the second beat of that. But again, I leave that out. It's like, oh no, I need that to come back in order for this to work. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. People listening to this are like, yeah, he's full of it.
No, man. I mean, it's so interesting hearing your process. Like you're literally honing your craft. It's no different than when someone's practicing their free throws or they're practicing their music. This is it's really helpful because it shows that comedy isn't just spontaneous. You don't just, like, some people think there's this eureka moment where you're in the shower and you just have the whole joke. But from what you're saying, you have a line. But then it's almost like, you're germinating a seed or you're planting a garden and it needs to grow and develop, and maybe the crop will die or maybe it'll, turn into a whole field. So there really is this trial and error process, it sounds like.
Yeah. It's like, I don't think a full joke, at least not in my experience. I've never had a whole joke reveal itself. It's like, it slowly kind of is fed to you. You know, the
Right.
mind kind of feeds you this joke along the way until you piece it together, and hopefully you're able to, you know, give a proper arrangement to the ideas that are kind of spewing out of your mind. But if not, it's kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah. No, and I feel like, and I think you'd agree here, I feel like comedy in 2020 is as hard as it's ever been in history. And there's a lot of reasons behind that, but one that I think of is competition. Because let's be honest, I think everyone that has a Twitter account today thinks that they're a comedian. You know, anyone that has like 100,000 followers thinks, oh, I'm a, what's the phrase? Like you're like an influencer, you're a comedian influencer.
Sure.
Do you feel that competition?
I feel like I don't know I don't know if there's so much a competition as, you know, again, there's so many quadrants in comedy now. It's like before we thought it was, you know, the comedic actor, the stand-up comic, the funny radio guy, you know, but it's just more quadrants, I guess. It's the Instagram comedian, it's the Twitter comedian, it's the YouTuber, you know, it's what have you. So I don't know if there's necessarily competition per se, but, you know, I guess everyone has their own style of humor, and you know, again, you'll gravitate to what you think is funny. Like some people are like, you know, they love these videos, these quick videos. First it was Vine, and then Vine became Instagram, you know, and then
TikTok,
you know,
yeah.
TikTok now. It's like, and some people, I mean, swear by TikTok, and it's like, all right, you know, it's like I don't really. I've decided not to go in that direction as of right now, but of course those things can change, you know. But yeah, anyone with a social media account, it's like, you know, they usually gravitate or they take it in the direction of comedy. You know, that's usually the effort that's put into these accounts. You know, it's like, oh, I'm gonna make it funny, or I'm gonna do what I think is funny. You know, so I mean, yeah.
Yeah, man. I think that's one element. You know, everything we're talking about with the competition and the number of people out there, but then you also sort of have this other factor, which is this outrage culture, as Bill Burr has called it, where, you know, you go to a show and you're performing and people are in the audience, they're crossing their arms and they have to literally stifle their natural reactions because they think the jokes are offensive, or they think the people around them will judge them or shame them for laughing. So have you experienced that at all, Jesus?
Sure, and it's almost like yeah, just yes, people would make a big thing out of something, but again, you have to keep in mind that it's like the comedy club at least is a place where you go to work a premise out. You know, it's like, how are you able to find your parameters of what is, I guess, what's funny, first of all, and second is like, is this in the voice that I want to say it in? You know, meaning if you're more on the shock comic and you're okay with the response you got, then it's a response. You know, people can, you know, clapping, laughter, oohs or boos are one and the same. You know, it's still a response. So it's like, if you're okay with it, then by all means. But, you know, people come to comedy clubs and they get offended, and it's like, hey guys, like, you guys are coming here, you know, there's the internet, you can kind of do the research and more or less see if the comic you're about to go see is to your liking, you know. So when you go, chances are it's going to be in or around that vicinity of humor. And if you feel like I'm on the outskirts of that, don't go. Wait a week. There'll be a new comic coming to your town in about a week, and see how close you are to, you know, that equilibrium point of, is he in line with the humor that I like, you know? And it's like, I just don't think it's, I find it funny that people get offended when they go to a comedy club, because it's like, hey man, we're trying to figure out these jokes. I mean, even if you see a act that's pretty much put together from a comedian, they're trying to find it still. You know, they're still trying to find it in the dirt, trying to see where it's at. And then eventually the final product is a special. And again, if you're offended at a special, it's very easy to like turn it off. You know, all right, I've hit my limit. I've found my parameter. It's not for me. Done. End of discussion. But I think what makes it tough is the need for the public to get on social media or kind of be like, this guy sucks. Is like,
eviscerate you.
You don't like the person. Not that he sucks. I mean, there's a lot, you know, there's many people in every field that may not be to your liking, but they're very successful, and that's because somebody likes them. So, you know, people feel like they need to voice this opinion that's going to change the world in some positive ways. Like, you're just shitting on somebody's life career that, you know, they've spent their whole life forming a joke. If you don't like it, you know, turn it off.
Yeah, that's so well said. And just first of all, what George Carlin said resonates. It's just because you're offended doesn't mean you're right.
Yes.
And
Beautiful. Yep.
on top of that, man, you also have to think about how this is discouraging people from entering comedy. I know that a lot of stand-up comics, I don't know if you feel this way, but a lot of stand-up comedians don't want to go to college campuses anymore because they feel like, you know, it's going to lead to a PR crisis, or, you know, they don't want to perform at certain venues because of the crowd might be hostile. So how do you think that comedy can survive in this sort of climate in 2020, or does it have to change?
I think, yeah, it's like what's going back to the college thing is that you would think, you know, open-minded people of all places, it would be at a university where people are a little open-minded, and I think challenging somebody's point of view is important. You know, that's how we open up dialogues and kind of get to the bottom of certain issues or you know, social issues that, you know, are brought up in comedy. But I don't know. Like, I think the college, like performing stand-up comedy at a college is such a hard thing to take on, because you are walking on eggshells. And I think in order to be a stand-up comic, you know, you're gonna have to have that freedom of, I can take this in any tangent that I see fit, if it's going to make the joke. Again, I don't think people are able, well, you are able to say anything, but there's consequences and repercussions to what you say, you know. And I also believe that, you know, you can tell somebody's, you know, point of view, or how can I say it? If they're saying it out of malice, you know, if you're saying something out of malice, it's like, that's when you can kind of say, like, this is no longer a joke. You're trying to offend somebody, you know. Even a thank you can be said in such a way that says F off, you know what I mean? So it's like, if you say now a sensitive word in such a tone, it's like, yeah, that removes a comedy. But I think colleges get, you know, they have in the past gotten offended, but I mean, I tend to do okay in colleges. You know, I talk about pretty, you know, PG-13 to,
Like mustard, you talk about mustard and bicycle
I mean,
seats.
bicycle seats or whatever. My upbringing, my mom said this, I did this, you know, I grew up in this situation, you know. So I think I think I do okay, but I do see that as a challenging thing moving forward. You know, where do people go to consume comedy without them getting offended, or some place, you know, like you said, some comics won't go to certain venues because, you know, people are pretty hostile there, or that kind of thing. But it's like, look, at the end of the day, we just want to laugh. Just be open-minded. You're at a comedy club, you know, you're not at a, you know, yeah, you're at a comedy club, for God's sake. So.
Yeah, man. Like, who's going out on their Friday night after a long work week to, you know, have like a just like a microscope going around making sure that everyone, you know, it's too much. And like you said, it's like comedy's about unity, comedy's about community. Just like, I don't know, like my perspective on this, I did an episode about outrage and PC culture, is people just need to sort of lighten up. I understand, like you said, about malicious intent. If someone's being bigoted, if someone's being closed-minded or intolerant, that's fine. But if people are making a joke, I don't know if you should be taking it that seriously.
Yeah, yeah, you can tell somebody's intentions, and if they're just trying to make a joke, hey, comedy is very much trial and error. Oop, that didn't work. Oop, I went too far. You know what I mean? You know, and that's up to the comedian to decide. It isn't for the public. I don't think.
Yeah. So the last thing I want to chat with you about, Jesus,
Yeah,
I thought I liked tacos, but you literally host a web series on First We Feast
yeah.
where you invite some of the world's funniest comics to talk about comedy while eating the best tacos in LA. How did you land that gig?
Man, I was very excited to find out that First Week Feast had reached out with this idea, and they wanted me to host this show, and it was, you know, talking shop with comedians, and also exploring and kind of, you know, mapping out this, you know, taco restaurant scene that exists in LA. And, you know, we go all over the place, to brick and mortar spots, to trucks, to, you know, a little stand on the corner. Like, we just do a deep dive, and, you know, we talk comedy, we talk shop, and we have the delicious LA taco scene as a backdrop. And it was just great. I mean, First Week Feast has been phenomenal. They've been very supportive. They welcome me into the family with open arms, and it was just a great, awesome experience working with them, working with the comedians, some old friends, made new friends, you know, doing it. And now it's great. It's like, yeah, it's, you know, moving forward, you know, season 2, it's, you know, we're gearing up for something like for season 2. And, you know, we're trying to figure out what that's going to look like in the age of Corona. But yeah, we're moving forward, and yeah, I'm excited to film another season.
And you got some hilarious content on there. Actually, I binged a couple episodes. I saw the one with Gabriel Iglesias. It was absolutely hilarious. He's a funny guy.
He's funny, man, and it's so crazy to know that we grew up, I mean, just a few miles away from each other. You know,
Wow.
we went to the same high school. We grew up going to the same taco spots, and you know, he grew up in front of the Taco Loco spot that we featured in that episode, and I grew up right up the street on Magnolia, still on Magnolia Street. And yeah, real funny guy, and you know, I had no idea we had so much in common. So,
Do you ever get sick of eating tacos? You be honest.
No, I don't think so, because you just switch up the protein, I guess, chicken, steak, you know, whatever. But yeah, there's so much to eat, and so many different styles, I think, which is great. And one of the things I really love of the Tacos Con Todo series is showcasing the stories behind the restaurant, the truck, you know, the family recipes, talking to the families. I think I would like to see more of it going into the second season, because we definitely, you know, made it a point to include that in every episode for the most part. But I just got a kick out of that. You know, it's like, you know, Carnitas El Momo, the one I did with Andy Milanakis. I mean, you know, they talk about how they make it, how it's a family, you know, recipe that came from Mexico. And, you know, they have 3 generations of families working on these restaurants. I mean, I love that. You know, Jorge over at Tacos 1986, you know, talking about how he kind of got his start and became what it is now. Also, Tacos El Árabe, you find out a little bit of the history of what a al pastor taco is. You know, it's, you know, they talk, you know, the taquero that we talked to there, you know, and told us a little bit about the history and where the influence comes from. You know, al pastor is more of a Lebanese influence. You know, they used to do it with lamb meat, but in Mexico and Puebla, at least, they would do it with pig because it was cheaper. So it's a lot of cool, you know, information, you know, that we sneak in there. So
I love that. It's like the convergence of, it sounds like your two loves. You got your cuisine and you got your comedy, like coming together in this show. It's beautiful. And it's funny. I don't know who has the better job, because on the one hand, with First We Feast, you got Sean Evans. He gets to host Hot Ones and interview Kristen Bell, Gordon Ramsay, Shaq, and ScarJo, but he has to eat all those painfully spicy wings. And then you have you get to hang out with Andy Milonakis and Gabriel Iglesias, and you just get to eat tacos. I might rather have your job, to be honest with you.
I definitely put on some weight, man. I filming that whole season, I went up 10 pounds, a solid 10 pounds, and I'm like, I got to get off before the second season, man.
Yeah, man. Well, we'll definitely make sure you check that out, guys. On you can watch Tacos Con Todo, the web series from Complex First We Feast, on YouTube. And in case you don't know, Jesus recently released his very first stand-up special, Stay at Home Son, which you can watch on Showtime. I love that name, by the way. I don't know how you came up with that. That's very apropos.
Yeah, man. It was the special was filmed last year, November 2nd, and you know, it's set to come out. It's going to come out May 29th at 9 p.m. on Showtime, so check it out. Mm-hmm. And, you know, shortly after that, it'll be on all platforms where people can stream it, rent it, that kind of thing. So I'm excited. My first special, and, you know, Stay at Home Son. You got to watch the special and
I love that.
And look out for that phrase.
Well, listen, this has been an amazing conversation, Jesus. Where can people find you on Instagram? It looked like a moment ago it was behind you, but for our folks who are listening to the audio, where can people find you on Instagram, Twitter, and the socials?
Instagram at Jesus Trejo and the number 1. That's JESUSTREJO, number 1. Twitter is just my name. It's at Jesus Trejo, or you can just go on the website, JesusTrejo.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here, man. This has been an absolute pleasure.
This was great. Thank you so much for your time. I had a ball. Thank you. And yeah, talk to you soon, man.
Thanks a lot, brother.
Peace.